This podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors. Your San Diego County Toyota dealers. We've got what it takes. Fix Auto. Corky's Pest Control. And Lolita's Family of Restaurants.
Hey there, sports fans. Welcome to another week of Laxcast here in the SFC Athletics offices. I am Christian Pedersen, your host without the most, and this is my analyst, Coach Tom DeMeo. Coach, good to see you. Switched from the red to the black this week.
Yeah.
Not like it's sunny and hot or anything outside. You're crazy. Okay, so folks, it's almost here. This is Christmas Eve, if you will, because the playoffs will be starting next week. So what we're going to kind of do here is, instead of the breaking down the week that was, looking for the week that is yet to be, we're just going to kind of talk about general game balls all season long and give you sort of a little snapshot of, quote unquote, if the playoffs started today, here's what it would all look like. Let's just let's start from the metaphorical top, if you will, and work our way down. Guys, open division. So right now, excuse me for reading this off my handy dandy notes, but we got Torrey Pines, LCC, Poway, Coronado, Cathedral Catholic, San Marcos, SFC, Westview. Granted, there's still a little wiggle room because there are a couple more games left to be played, but let's just say, hypothetically, that's our open division bracket. Coach, is that an open division bracket that will deliver an entertaining playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think the first round there's going to be a couple lopsided games, but certainly as it gets into that second round, all these matchups we've talked about all year between LCC and Poway and Coronado and these guys, they're all, the Cathedral, they should all be seeing each other again at some point. So it will be entertaining. What was from start to finish.
Let's talk about that entertaining aspect, because you listed off basically the first 5 teams. So we're not just talking about a 2 or 3 at the top and everyone else. We're actually started talking about a mix here where a 5 seed could upset a 4. Let's throw in San Marcos at that 6. They're a team that hasn't really been playing marquee games, but they're beating up on everybody. You guys are coming off a Division I championship, so you have, postseason experience. This sort of, to me, reeks of, as a county, San Diego's starting to turn that corner, and it's not just the rich get richer and everyone else is fighting for a D1 title. I won't say that Westview is going to upset Torrey, but this seems like this is the first year in a long time where there's actually a little bit of like, hey, this is why you actually play the game, and it's not just on paper.
Yeah, I mean, and again, especially I think in that top 5 group, you had Coronado and Cathedral already played twice. You have LCC having a close game with Torrey the other night.
Oh my goodness, that game on Friday, 9-7 Torrey winning. That was very impressive.
Exactly. So I mean, you have to think that those guys are Poway, or those guys will all be in the mix. So there's definitely it's been 1 or 2 goal games across the board for those guys at the top. So certainly going to be exciting when they get back to that point. And kind of the unique thing I think about is a lot of these teams just played like in the past week or so. So
yeah, it's been really interesting. Instead of it being big non-league matchups early in the season and then come back to, we'll see them again in 2 or 3 months. We just saw these guys twice in the last 2 weeks. Let's play them again. I kind of want to expand the field to the rest of it because right now it would look that Bishops, Carlsbad, Scripps Ranch, Grossmont would be the first 4 seeds in Division I. Let's just talk about all of Open and D1 though. Big shout out. We got double-digit teams with double-digit wins, and then another 5 sitting at 9 wins who all have a game or 2 left this season. That, to me, really just reeks of, we're talking about the talent level rising, because a lot of these teams are picking up wins against teams from outside of San Diego. A lot of these teams are winning the games that should be won versus Division II teams. What does this say to you, just objectively looking at the brackets?
Well, one, San Diego's a great place for teams to come play when they're on break. So it is great now that we're getting a ton of teams coming down. We're figuring out ways to match those games up so they're not too lopsided one way or the other. And so it's given us as coaches opportunities to play guys outside the county and and outside of the state even. So and it also is a sign of a lot of new programs. So you got new programs start up, and they're in a league, and those guys, someone who's been more established in the league will beat up on that team. But as we've seen in some of these leagues, leagues, that all changes a couple years down the road.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of that change. I'm glad you bring that up. Let's transition down to the Division II bracket. Right now, that's sitting as Del Norte, St. Augustine, Canyon Crest, Patrick Henry, El Camino, Bonita Vista, San Diego, Francis Parker. That's the top 8. Now, I believe it's 16 that make it out of that group. So obviously, twice that. Most of the Division II teams will make it, but let's say that those 8 are perhaps the ones that are in the mix. Del Norte, though, an interesting group because they were in the D2 title game last year. They took a shot at Poway this year, fell short there, obviously, but they've rattled their way back to be, 2 playoff appearances in a row. That's going to be huge for them. Saints, though, really strikes me as the team that maybe of anybody is putting their first big step forward. They won league. They beat Sarah last week to win league. What stands out to you about this D2 group?
Well, I mean, I think certainly Del Norte stands out because they scheduled probably the hardest as they went. But I do think Saints will challenge them, and we actually play Saints tomorrow, so I'll know a little better how they compare. Firsthand. But, I've been saying all year they've been doing a good job down there. So I think that Del Norte did schedule the hardest and played the most D1 and open type teams, so they'll have a little bit of an advantage going into that just because of their experience.
Probably both Saints and Del Norte are teams that we will be talking about as Division I teams next year because they've done well enough for themselves over a period of time. I'm going to put you kind of on the spot here in the D1 bracket.
Yep.
Give me a dark horse team to look for. We're talking everywhere from Westview, Bishops, Country Day, La Jolla High, Pack Ridge, Valley Center. Maybe it's Eastlake, RB. I could keep listening, but give me someone who might surprise some people.
I think when you look at Pack Ridge's record, and this is coming from I played them, I think twice in the past 2 weeks. And those guys had a 1-goal game with Bishop. So I think, even though their record is not impressive, that's a team that's gonna give any team they play problems. And I think Carlsbad's another one too. So we haven't talked about Carlsbad much because they never really made that jump up into the open, but they've been in the Final Four of that D1, it seems like forever. I know we played them a couple years back in that bracket. And so those guys, no one's really talking about them, but it'll be interesting to see how they match up, whether it's Westview or Bishops or us or whoever ends up in that bracket, how Carlsbad and Pack Ridge fare in there. So I think, in my eyes, Pack Ridge is a good dark horse to be in that Final Four.
All right, there you go. Run out to Vegas and put your money on the Firebirds. We probably shouldn't encourage gambling on high school sport. Put your friendly wagers. Get out there on Twitter and start making a fool out of yourself or something. Coach, let's switch over to the girls' side. Sounds like kind of a broken record again. Every week we get up here talking about how Torrey Pines is just steamrolling through everybody. And it seems like that might be the case once again. If things were to drop as they were, playoffs starting tomorrow, it would be Torrey Pines, Poway, La Jolla High School, LCC, Cathedral Catholic, Scripps Ranch, Coronado, Bishops is your open division. Gut reaction, just first thing that pops in your mind about that bracket.
That Torrey's going to win it. But, they have the most talent and seem like they're poised to win it. But the thing that pops out to me is who's going to challenge Torrey. So I think Poway and LCC are positioned the best. It's kind of unique. We're talking about the same teams on the boys' side in my eyes. But, they're rich with talent, all those teams. And you never know what's going to happen when it's, you get to playoffs, but I'm certain that, La Jolla and Cathedral and Coronado and Bishops will all be making a play to get in that mix. And I do think there's that possibility of an upset in the girls' side, certainly from the bottom, say, 3 teams in that open division.
Well, what seems to be kind of an interesting thing about the girls' side of this bracket that we're talking about versus the guys' side is the guys' side seems to be all very, established teams, big-name talent. This girls' side, not that to discredit La Jolla High School or a team like that, but there are some new teams that are maybe higher up in the seedings than you would have said. Maybe at the beginning of the year, you'd have been like, oh, Coronado's a traditional powerhouse. They'll probably come in around where Torrey, Poway, and LCC are. Now Coronado's down at the bottom of the bracket. Scripps has made that jump up. La Jolla has made that jump way up. And a very young Cathedral team kind of sitting in the middle. It feels like we're starting that process of sort of hitting the refresh button. Like there's a new generation that's going to get their first taste of the playoffs here.
Yeah, and I think you can, a good way to look at it is I definitely think the girls' game's a little behind high school wise than the boys out here. So I think they're just a few years behind, and this is what we saw 3, 4, 5 years ago in the boys side was, you know, a bunch of teams up there, and now you've seen a total shift with some of these teams. So you know, I think that same evolution will happen with the girls.
You start to look at that longer trend of okay, now we made it. Now there's no looking back. We're an open division team. Let's bring in that talent. New teams throwing their hat into that ring every single year.
Yeah, I mean, like Hilltop and Carlsbad and even Coronado's always been up in that mix, and I think, you know, they'll have to fight their way over some of those new programs that are having success. So, yeah, I think that's one over the next couple of years is going to get much stronger and spread out a little bit.
So let's talk about what would be the Division I bracket. It would be San Marcos, Mission Hills, Del Norte, Otay Ranch. Your top 4 rounding it out is Carlsbad, RB, Eastlake, Canyon Crest, Westview, Hilltop, Mount Carmel, SFC. I'm sorry, that's a long list. We'll put up the bracket for you guys to look at. Coach, I asked you on the guys' side. I'll ask you on the girls' side. Give me a dark horse that might just be a team. Maybe you're even covering your eyes, throwing a dart at it. But who's somebody that you're kind of like, hey, you know what? I would love to see them put together a run.
Oh, there was Scripps in that mix.
The Scripps is up in the.
They're open. Okay.
Yeah, so we got.
So I would.
Marcos,
I think
Hills,
I saw Del Norte play at one point, and they seemed young, but they kept. I know they kept a few games really close for a long time. So I'd see them as a dark horse in that mix, and I also think Carlsbad's another one. We've talked about them a couple times. They've had some up and down games, and you know, I think Hilltop beat them, and you know, they're kind of in that mix. So yeah, I think that Division I
Carlsbad did suffer some big losses to LCC.
Yep.
Hilltop's major North County win was versus Mount Carmel.
That's right. Yeah.
But you know, Hilltop, another team that could potentially. This D1 bracket this year seems wide open. It's kind of San Marcos. Probably the de facto, just because they will be that top seed and they put up some big wins. But like you said, Del Norte is a new team that they've been in and out of our top 10. It's just good to see, like you mentioned, that growing trend is finally taking off, and it's not just, oh, well, San Marcos didn't make the open division. Well, at least their consolation prize is that they get to just beat up on everybody else in the bracket. Let's move down to the Division II girls bracket. Top 4 teams right here: Mission Bay, Patrick Henry, Pacific Ridge, then Helix. I like how Lax Power puts it as Helix Charter. It's a very official sounding name for just what's Helix. Again, new teams. We have the established, and then we have the kind of outsiders, everyone scratching and clawing over each other to try and get a name for themselves. An interesting group. It seems like every group we look at here is maybe known for one win they had this season or one player they have, but not known for a whole body of work yet.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, what I would look at, again, go back to, they're still a few years behind where the boys are at, and I think Patrick Henry might be a sleeper in that division. I know they've had a boys program for a while, and the girls had a couple good wins this year. So I think that one, I think Division II is going to evolve there too. It certainly will.
And it's kind of wide open. This is not a group where one of these teams played way up or where one of these teams was in last year's championship game and now they're looking to repeat. Eastlake moved up, Otay Ranch moved up. So last year's D2 title game, both teams are gone. It's a fresh set. Somebody will not be a repeat appearance. It's really great to see that. Mission Bay with Kylie Krager as sort of their backbone. Patrick Henry has Annalise Elam, who's kind of their backbone. You start picking out these one or two players at each team who, if they have a big game or a big couple games, you're talking about all of a sudden, boom, you're CIF champions for the first time in program history. Now you can start really opening up the conversation of saying, hey, we're not just a fly-by-night. Hey, we had that one win against so-and-so. We're a real team.
Yeah, and it's, I think that's what's great about the way they do the playoffs in San Diego. It's, it gives some of these newer teams an opportunity to compete for a championship, and it allows these teams to have a playoff run rather than, in some areas where they have 36 teams and a couple teams get a bye, but you may be number 36 going to play number 4 or 6 and that is pretty lopsided usually. So I think the way they do it is good, and that's certainly going to help out those Division II teams and to have a competitive competitive playoff run.
Well, and you can speak to it personally right now about what the culture change is after you do win that first title. You guys won the Division I title last year on the guys' side. And just how much does that change the confidence, the off season, the mindset of a school after you break that barrier down and you win that first title?
I mean, at some point you have to. Most seasons end with a loss, and it sort of teaches the kids how to win. And so that I know for sure that has helped us this year. I mean, we won 3 or 4 one-goal games to get and win the championship, and that has certainly put us in a good position to win one-goal games this year with some of the returning personnel. So I think all programs need that opportunity at some point, whether it's growing or whether it's they go through years of losing and then they drop and they get it. It's really important for the kids.
Yeah, it doesn't really have to be. You don't have to be walking around with a 36-carat diamond on here being like, yeah, we won that state title. If it D2, D1, Open, it's all the same. It's that confidence booster of saying, hey, we can get it done. And we're going to be talking about that nonstop for the next couple weeks because Saturday morning, playoff brackets are coming out, and then it just is all bedlam from there as it just becomes a brawl to win a couple titles. We'll be here with highlights. We'll be here with analysis. Next time you see us, it'll be us breaking down each game in the brackets, so stay tuned for that. Coach, thank you very much. Go get your last week of practice in, and I'll go check it out, and we will see you next week, sports fans.